you, Dad? Here I
am! The internationally known theatrical producer Wallace R. Parnell once wrote, "If you were to tell the average Australian that his country had produced one of the greatest living clowns, he would more than likely call you a fool." Yet to those of us who've had the experience of directing the world's greatest comedians, there can be no doubt that Australian Roy Rene, Mo, must be reckoned amongst their number. That was in 1945. 30 years later, Graham Kennedy wrote in a foreword to Fred Parsons' book, A Man Called Mo, he was Australia's greatest and most famous comedian. His falsetto voice and his timing transformed even the weakest gags into belly laughs.
Tonight, in response to numerous requests, I'm going to recite to you my own original poem, The Village Blacksmith, by Longfellow. The Village Blacksmith.
Aye, which village?
Oh, blimey, that mug's in again.
I asked you which village?
The little English village, S.B. Zeus by the sea. The Village Blacksmith. Under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands.
Why? Why did he stand?
Because his anvil was too hot to sit down. Now listen up, boy, give me a fair go. That's all I ask is a fair go. The village blacksmith. Under the spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The stiff and mighty man was here with large and sinewy hands.
Why were his hands sinewy?
Oh, blimey, listen. You try picking up red-hot horseshoes and see what your hands are. The smith, the mighty man, was here with large and sinewy hands, and the muscles on his brawny arms stood out like iron bands. Verse 2. His hair was crisp and black and long. His face was like the tan. Oh, dear, look. I don't think I'd better say the next line. I hate anything coarse.
Go on. What is it?
His brow was wet with honest perspiration.
Mo was born in Hindley Street, Adelaide, in 1892, the son of a Jewish cigar manufacturer named Van der Sluys. His mother was English, a Miss Barnett. He certainly had his share of names. His parents called him Harry, but to his friends at school he was known as Bullet Sluys, apparently after the shape of his skull. In his very early stage days he was billed as Little Roy, then Boy Roy, the boy soprano, and later Boy Roy, the would-be comic. His adopted surname, Rene, was taken from a famous French clown named Rene, although the pronunciation was altered to suit local taste. The nickname Mo was added when he joined up with Nat Phillips, but more of that later. As Little Roy, young Harry, aged 10 or so, made his debut, formally dressed in a suit and an Eton collar, singing from the dress circle box of the Theatre Royal in Adelaide. Soon after he made it onto the stage proper in the pantomime Sinbad the Sailor. That was in 1905. When Roy was 13, the family moved to Melbourne, and later in his teens he continued his vaudeville career at the old Gaiety Theatre in Bourke Street. If he wasn't singing at the Gaiety, he was probably to be found in the gallery of the nearby Opera House, learning the tricks of the trade from the stars of the English music hall who appeared there for Harry Rickards. When his voice broke, Roy got the idea of appearing as a Hebrew comedian, and during tours of country towns, he developed his characterization. He migrated to Sydney and appeared at the little old Princess Theatre in Railway Square, where he worked in blackface in a minstrel show. Mr. Benjamin Fuller, later Sir Benjamin, of Fuller's Theatres, spotted him and sent him on a tour of New Zealand. During this tour, he experimented with the black and white makeup which became his trademark. Having created it, he never changed it. Back in Australia, Roy became a single act on the Fuller circuit. He met up with a husband and wife act called Phillips and Merritt. Nat Phillips and Daisy Merritt had recently returned from overseas, and they were a great success on the circuit. Nat and Roy decided to form a team, and they cast round for a suitable name. It was Bill Sadler, an old-time theatrical and later the Sydney Tivoli stage doorman, who invented the name for their partnership. He related the story many years later to the ABC's Charles Graham.
I did not call Nat Phillips Stiffy. He had that name. But he handed me a photograph dressed up as a rabbito, and it had at the bottom Stiffy. So the matinee was coming on, so I thought I'd go around and see Roy Rene, see if he was going to have a nickname. And I said, Roy, what about a nickname? There's a photo with Stiffy on it. And he said, oh, well, Stiffy and Ike. And he's putting on his Mo. So I said, what about Mo, Stiffy and Mo? He said, that'll do. So I come round the front and I rung up the printer and got it altered and it was Stiffy and Mo, and that's how he got his name.
And that was the beginning of the most successful comedy team in the history of Australian vaudeville.
Hello, Mo. Hello, Stiffy. Where have you been? I've had a wonderful time. Where? Been down to an orchard. An orchard? You know what an orchard is? An orchard? Yes. Sure I do. What is it? An orchard is a place where people orchard. No. An orchard is a place where they grow fruit trees. No. Oh, this was a wonderful place. Was it? Great big... I got a story about an orchard. What is it? There's a great big orchard. Yes. In the middle of the orchard, there's a beautiful big apple tree. That's a novelty, having an apple tree in an orchard, isn't it? Yes. Now, on the apple tree, there's a great big apple. You couldn't make a gherkins, could you? No. And on this big apple, there's a little bird resting. Of course, he can please himself what he's doing there. Now, here comes the joke. What? Now, how would you get that apple without disturbing the bird? I don't know. How would you get the apple without disturbing the bird? Wait till the bird flies away. Wait till the... Oh, my word, that's clever. That is clever. Yes. You know I like that? Now? It's clean. Oh, yes. That's a lovely, clean, clever, refined story. Oh, beautiful. They'd appreciate that down the Commercial Travellers Club, I think. Oh, I got a lot of them. Well, that's a clever... Wait till the bird flies away. Here's another one. That is clever. Listen. It isn't me sister. It isn't me brother. And yet it's the child of me father and mother. Who is it? I know. Oh. Wait till the birds fly away. No. It isn't me sister. It isn't me brother. Yet it's the child of me father and mother. Who is it? Well, who is it? It's me. How can it be you? It isn't me sister. It isn't me brother. It's the child of me father and mother. It's me. It isn't me sister. It isn't me brother. And yet it's the child of me father and mother. Why, of course it's you, my word. That's a clever. You're witty. There's no doubt about it. You're clever. Beautiful, Daisy. But I must call somebody in. Yes, tell that to somebody. Oh, where's Daisy? Hello, Daisy. Hello, Mo. I've just heard a lovely, clean story. It's a beautiful story. Yes. It isn't me sister. No. It isn't me brother. No. And yet it's the child of me father and mother. Wait till the birds fly away. No, that's the other story. Oh, it's a yes, I made a mistake here. It isn't me sister. No. It isn't me brother. And yet it's the child of me father and mother. Go on, who is it? Oh, you darn fool, I know. Why, it's you. No, you darn fool, it's him.
The new comedy partnership of Stiffy and Mo opened at the small, not too savoury Princess Theatre in Sydney in July 1916. By Christmas, Nat and Roy were at the Grand Opera House for one of Fuller's most successful pantomimes, The Bunyip. This lavish Australian-flavoured pantomime, with an exciting bushfire scene for a climax, ran off and on for 2 years in Sydney and Melbourne. Nat Phillips was the producer as well as playing a comic roustabout. Roy was his foil, Villiers Arnold was the baddie, and Queenie Paul, who still performs in Sydney clubs today, was the principal boy. In all, the Stiffy and Mo partnership lasted for over 15 years, but there were stormy periods and the pair split up a couple of times. They were reputedly the bluest comics ever to face an audience, and many stories have been told over the years about what they were supposed to have said. There certainly was a streak of honest vulgarity in their work, but a lot of the stories were a myth, possibly designed to drum up publicity. By today's standards, their jokes would appear incredibly tame, but in the 1920s, the two were in trouble more than once with the Fuller management. In 1927, after a 2-year break, Roy teamed up again with Nat Phillips for an engagement at Fuller's Theatre in Sydney. It was a highly successful reassociation from the audience's point of view, but it wasn't destined to last long. The final parting came the following year during a tour of New Zealand.
Hello, Mo. Hello, Stiffy. Where are you going? To Honolulu to see the pretty dancing girls. You don't have to go to Honolulu to see the pretty dancing girls. No? Come down to La Perouse. I'll show you some pretty girls. Some nice girls there? Beautiful girls. Apples. We saw the apples in the moonlight way down in Yarra Bay. There's something sloppy in the moonlight way down in Yarra Bay. Say, Mrs. Lubra, say, Jack Marubra, I think I've got the blues. 'Cause I be feeling seedy lately way down in La Perouse. Would you like a eucalyptus baby like a you? Yes, I'd like a eucalyptus baby, providing that it's not a Jew. Would you want a eucalyptus baby? You never know what it might do. If you nurse a eucalyptus baby, then I'd go out and work for you. Maybe he'll cry. Maybe not. Maybe he's dry. Get still water then. Maybe there'll be a lot of them behind. To bring up a eucalyptus baby, give him plenty pork and Irish stew. Right, sir. I must have a eucalyptus baby. Well, I'll see what Mr. Lang can do. Would you like a eucalyptus baby? A eucalyptus baby like you? Yes, I'd like a eucalyptus baby, providing that it's not a Jew. Would you nurse a eucalyptus baby? You never know what it might do. If you'd like a eucalyptus baby, I'll see what Mr. Lang can do.
Roy returned from the New Zealand tour with a new partner from the company, a pretty young girl with dark, attractive eyes named Sadie Gale. She'd come from a theatrical family and had been on the stage since childhood. Soon after their return, they were married. Sadie Gale, Mrs. Harry van der Sluys, recalls the big day.
We were married after the show at 11:30 at night, and the people in the company didn't know till the next day that we'd been married.
You were living in College Street in Sydney at the time.
That's right, yes, that's right. The friends of my grandparents in Arncliffe, I was born in Arncliffe, you know, and I believe one of them said to one of my aunties, "Oh, fancy Sadie marrying that dirty old Mo."
What an awful thing to think.
Yes. I was then a Roman Catholic, chosen by myself. I was not christened, baptized early in life, till I was 12 years old. Then I chose the Catholic religion. And then when I married, the position was, I was a Roman Catholic, married to a divorced Jew by a Presbyterian minister.
That's ecumenism for you.
So that is the reason why 10 years after children were born and everything, I told Roy I would like to go through the Jewish religion. And I did. I put my time in studying for 12 months, which I had to do. And then we were remarried in the Jewish church in Melbourne.
6 months after Sadie and Roy were first married, he collapsed just before a matinee of a revue called Clowns in Clover, then playing at the King's Theatre, Melbourne. He was rushed to hospital and operated on for peritonitis. During the 3 months that Roy was in hospital, his weight dropped to 6 stone, and more than once it seemed like he was going to die. Roy claimed that it was Sadie's nursing that saved him. He did recover, but for the rest of his life he had to wear a special supporting corset. Soon after his recovery, Roy and Sadie recorded this sketch together.
Well, darling, the last day of our honeymoon, love.
Yes, dear.
Have you enjoyed yourself?
Yes, dear.
You feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
We've had a wonderful time, haven't we?
Yes.
Back to the bush today, love.
Yes, dear.
Back to the cactus.
Yes.
Back to me job timber cutting. I'm just dying to get a sword in my hand, love. And leave you at home in the house, listening to all the little birds chirruping in the trees.
Yes, dear.
Feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
When you get back home, love, you'll be able to show all the girls all the pretty things you bought. You'll be able to show them that beautiful first stable you got on.
Yes, dear. Real skunk.
Eh?
Real skunk.
Yeah, I can smell it from here. What are you shaking it for?
I'm going to get a few mothballs for it.
Mothballs? My God, you want cannonballs to kill everything in there? Feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
Did you like the hotel I brought you to?
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's a wonderful hotel. And isn't the boss, Mr. McCackie, a fine fellow?
A gentleman.
I think Mr. McCackie is one of nature's own gentlemen. Now, I'll go and see Mr. McCackie and ask him for the bill, dear, see? And we'll go upstairs and pack up as we can get the first train. Feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thanks, dear.
Don't undo that sash around your waist, darling. You're liable to fall in the heat. Oh, good morning, Mr. McCackie.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Do you mind making out my bill, please?
Are you going away?
Yes, Mr. McCackie. Back to the cactus today.
So you're going back home?
Yes, Mr. McCackie.
You had a good time?
We've had a wonderful time, Mr. McCackie.
You like the hotel?
It's been simply marvelous.
A beautiful room?
Wonderful rooms, Mr. McCackie, with all the latest inconveniences.
Inconveniences?
Yes, 2 kinds of cold water in the room.
What are they?
Dirty and clean.
Oh, I shall have to speak to the housemaid about
Oh,
that.
don't worry about that, Mr. McCackie. We're going back home today. Of course, we might be back in 12 months' time.
Oh?
It's all according to the wife. Is you're awake after the business?
Oh, yes.
Don't be shy now. Mr. McCackie's a married man. He'll wake up to it. Of course, there might be 3 of us stopping with you then.
Well, I shall do my utmost to make you comfortable when you do return.
Don't try and do anything more, Mr. McCackie, or you're liable to muck it up.
And now, sir, I'll have much pleasure in presenting you your bill, which is £10.
£10? Oh, God, strike me lucky. Sorry, have a look at this. £10.
Too much.
3 months. Now, I'll go over and speak to this fellow and wipe a bit of this off. Hey, Mr. McCackie.
Well?
What's the idea of this bill? £10.
That's correct.
£10?
Yes, sir.
What do you think we've been eating? Goldfish?
Goldfish, why, that doesn't make any difference to me, sir. It's quite correct. £5 each per week.
Per week?
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps. Listen, all we've had since we've been in your hotel is 2 meals a day. 2 meals a day, and all day yesterday. Poor little Florrie only had a caraway seed.
2 meals a day and a caraway seed.
That's right.
Let me tell you, sir, I don't give a tinker's cut.
Hey, cut that out, McCackie, cut that out.
Cut what out?
Cut out that language in front of Florrie, you know.
What do you mean by language,
You're
sir?
speaking to a timber cutter, old boy.
A timber cutter. Let me tell you, sir, I don't care who or what you are. They are my terms. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. Florrie, will you take your arms from around my neck? It's time and place for everything. Control your feelings. Feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
Now, sir, let me explain this matter to you. You say you've only had 2 meals a day since you've been in the house.
That's all.
Well, sir, that is not my fault.
What way?
It's been your own fault.
Yes?
Certainly, it's been there if you wanted
It's been what?
There if you wanted
It's been there if we wanted it.
Certainly.
You mean that?
Yes, sir.
You mean that?
I do mean it.
You do mean it?
Yes, I do.
I think you do, too, somehow. Troy, dear, what he said, it's been there if we wanted it. There if we wanted it.
Yes, dear. Well, if you explain to Mr. McCackie...
Don't call him Mr. McCackie. Just plain McCackie to him and let it go at that.
Mr. McCackie's an awful nice man, dear, and if you explain...
Florrie, do you want me to knock you down? You don't have to speak to you like this. Been on a honeymoon and everything like that. But one's got to be cruel to be kind. Here's your money, Mr. McCackie. Give me your receipt.
Certainly, I'll give you a receipt. There's your receipt, sir.
Give me a piece of paper, will you?
Piece of paper, certainly. There you are.
There's my bill for £20.
What on earth are you talking about, your bill for £20?
My bill for £20.
What's this, sir? £20 for kissing your wife?
That's right.
Let me tell you, sir, I've never attempted to kiss your wife.
Well, it was there if you wanted it.
For quite a time after that recording was released, "Do you feel all right, lovey?" became a popular catchphrase. Another interesting thing in the sketch is the use of the name McCackie for the first time. Roy was to adopt it as his own on radio in the 40s. Fred Parsons, who wrote the McCackie Mansion's radio sketches, tells us that Roy had suggested the title because he'd always got a good laugh when he used the word McCackie. But I'm getting ahead of the story. Back to 1929 and the arrival of the Depression, which almost overnight closed theatres all over Australia. With the Depression at its height, Queenie Paul and her husband, Mike Connors, decided to take a gamble. They opened a variety show at Sydney's Haymarket Theatre with Roy as the star attraction. They faced opening night with some trepidation.
When we walked round the corner, I will never forget this sight as long as I live. There was a queue right away up to near the Lyric Theatre, right up George Street. And there was a crowd on the road, and the police were pushing them off. So Mike went up the queue and said, "How do you fellas make?" He said, and they said, "Oh, God, blimey." They said, "We can always spend a shilling out of the dole," he said, "to come in and forget our troubles and have a laugh and forget everything to laugh and see Mo."
Queenie Paul. Soon after this, it was in 1932, Nat Phillips died of a heart attack. Although Roy's relationship with Nat had been stormy, he was very distressed about the death. They had planned to join forces again, but it wasn't to be. Roy, all his life, was essentially a theatre performer, but he did make one movie. The year was 1935, and the film was called Strike Me Lucky, but it was not a success. As Roy said in his autobiography, "I found it too hard trying to be funny to no one."
He was broken-hearted. When we went out that night to see that picture, he just shook his head at me when we came out. He said, "Mum," he said, "that's the finisher." He said, "They've sliced it to pieces," he said, "and they've left the best stuff on the cutting room floor." Because he used to tell me, when he came, I was not in the picture,
No.
and when he came home at night, he'd say, "Did a funny scene today," and he'd tell me, and half these scenes were cut out. And it was a bitter disappointment to him. It was very badly cut in the finish, and he's always resentful that he made that film.
Yes. I've never seen it all the way through, but the scenes that I've seen are very funny. They do give you a feeling of Roy, so there is something preserved. Talking to Sadie Gale. The Depression had not been unkind to Roy, and his future was consolidated when Queenie Paul and Mike Connors took over the Grand Opera House in Sydney in 1932 and turned it into the new Tivoli Theatre. Roy remained a king there for 15 years. Jack Benny came to see him while on a visit to Australia. "His timing is unbelievable. It's perfect," he said. Roy felt that Jack was a great judge of talent. After the end of World War II and the return of overseas stars to the Australian vaudeville scene, Roy became conscious of the increasingly important role that radio was playing in entertainment. He did a few variety shows with the ABC, but they just didn't seem to get off the ground. Then, in March 1946, he signed a contract to appear exclusively for the Colgate-Palmolive radio unit in their top-rating commercial radio show, Calling the Stars. Roy was apprehensive about the change. He knew little about the techniques of radio broadcasting, and he was particularly worried about his facial expressions being lost. To help make things easier, his writer from the stage days, Fred Parsons, was asked to adapt some of his old routines. One was a routine based on the famous old poem, "The Green Eye of the Little Yellow God."
My dear public, this is your old friend Mo McCackie, and I'd like to recite you that beautiful little monologue entitled "The Green Eye of the Little Yellow God."
The green tie on the little yellow dog.
No, boy, the green eye of the little yellow god. Anybody's allowed to make a mistake, I can assure you. No harm done, of course. The green eye of the little yellow god. There's the little yellow idol to the north of Kathmandu.
The little yellow idol where?
To the north of Kathmandu, oh boy. Kathmandu's in India, I believe, somewhere adjacent to Pune, near Karachi.
What's the fellow talking about, Ponsonby? I haven't the slightest idea, Farquhar. Have you ever been to India?
No, I haven't, oh boy. As a matter of fact, I make a very good omelette, but I've never laid an egg in my life.
That's what you think. And another thing. There's no yellow idol anywhere near Kathmandu.
Gentlemen, please, I'm only saying what's in the poem. I didn't write it down, see? You take William Shakespeare, for instance. He wrote wonderful plays 300 or 400 years ago. And the plays he wrote in those days are still handed down to the present generation. He wrote plays like The Taming of the Shrew. I've been in that. Othello and Desdemona. I've been in that too. And Ladies' Night in a Turkish bath. I've never been in that worse luck. The Green Eye of the Little Yellow God. There's the little yellow idol to the north of Kathmandu. There's the little marble cross below the town.
What cross? What town?
I believe it was a little cross in the cemetery below the town of Kathmandu.
Listen, old boy, there's no cemetery for miles around. And what's more, there's no town either. As a matter of fact, Kathmandu is a village, and a very small village at that.
Listen, old boy, I don't give a damn if it's a dirty big city. Oh, really, ladies and gentlemen, this is very disconcerting to an artist of my caliber.
What's that?
I said it's very disconcerting to an artist of my caliber. And another thing, I hate anything called the green eye of the little yellow god. There's the little yellow idol to the north of Kathmandu. There's the little marble cross below the town. There's the broken-hearted woman that tends the brave, Mag Carew. Who? Mag Carew, literally, he was an officer in the 31st Dragons. I mean, dragoons, and they called him Mag Carew because he was a bit of a red bag.
Listen, old boy, Farquhar and I served in that regiment, and there wasn't any fella named Carew. Was there, Farquhar?
Definitely not, Ponsonby. There was a Cassidy, a Carpenter, a Carstairs.
That's so, but were there any more, see?
Yes, Suckerman sing.
Almost needless to say, Roy was a hit on radio right from his first appearance in Calling the Stars. And what a lineup of stars there were in Australian radio at that time. Dick Bentley, Jack Burgess, Kitty Blewett, Willie Fennell, Al Thomas, George Foster, those two old-fashioned girls, Ada and Elsie, Hal Lashwood, and, of course, Jack Davy. Davy was the king of radio then, and Roy set out to unseat him. Jack was very unhappy about Roy getting all the laughs.
My dear public, this week I've been conducting an intensive study of geometrical angles and hydrodynamic curves, and I've reached an unmistakable conclusion.
And what is that, Professor?
That fat sealers are better than skinny ones any day.
And tonight we have a rather unusual guest personality. She happened to be outside, and we invited her in to take part. Where is she? Excuse me, but what is your name, madam?
I'm the cleaner, Miss Queenie Ashcan.
Queenie Ashcan? Blimey, she must be Spencer's sister-in-law.
And again, we have our problem child, Whittle Jack Davy.
Hello, Mr. Burgess. Hello, Miss Ashcan. Professor McCackie, you make me feel like a whittle criminal.
Do I? Why?
I'm up before the beak again.
Well, tonight's topic for debate is, do we Australians have enough culture?
I have. I'm a vulture for culture.
Well, my brother Nicodemus always says,
Little boy. Little boy. I don't wish your brother Nicodemus in the arm, but I do wish you'd have been cabin boy on the Marie Celeste.
For radio, Fred Parsons and Alexander MacDonald wrote a series of sketches called The Barmaid and the Butcher. In his book, A Man Called Mo, Fred says that the original title of these little fantasies was The Barmaid and the Bishop. But it was decided that this title might offend church-going people who also happen to use Colgate dental cream and Palmolive soap. On the other hand, the sensibilities of butchers were apparently thought to be a lot more robust. The series lasted for nearly a year, and nobody ever did get to know what the barmaid really did say to the butcher.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And without any further ado, I will entertain you with the story of the barmaid and the butcher.
Oh, not again.
Oh, so you're back again, are you?
Yeah.
I think you must be drunk.
Well, you don't think I'd be if I was sober, do you?
The barmaid and the butcher. Once upon a time, there was a dear little barmaid called Effie. So you know the story, do you?
Yeah, and I could tell her the downside better than you do.
That's very interesting. So you could tell it better to me, eh?
Any mug could.
All right. Step right up here onto the podium, will you please?
Onto the what?
The podium. That's Point Piper for platform.
Okay, I will.
Well, come on up here. Now, come on up.
Yeah, what happens now?
You go right ahead and tell the story of the barmaid and the butcher.
All right, I will. Ladies and gentlemen.
Now, just a minute. How do you know they're ladies and gentlemen?
What do you mean?
You said gentlemen. For all you know, those Alex in the front row might be a lot of raw mugs.
Hey, they're my brothers.
That's what I mean.
Oh.
Mo and Hal Lashwood. In July 1947, Fred Parsons wrote the first episode of McCackie Mansions. It was hoped that it would last for 6 weeks, but in fact it ran for nearly 3 years and had the biggest listening audience of any show in Australia. They were a delightful collection of disreputable characters inhabiting McCackie Mansion. Mo was McCackie, of course. The next-door neighbour, Mr. Lasho, was played by Hal Lashwood. The late Harry Burgess, the compere of Calling the Stars, played Orrible Irby. Harry Avondale was Spencer the Garbage Man. And Roy's dim-witted son was played by Harry Griffiths. Young Harry Griffiths, who today works as an executive in the Colgate-Palmolive advertising agency, George Patterson, explains how he got to work on the shows.
During the war years, Jack Benny in the United States had used a young boy called Dennis Day as a feed doing some feed lines during the Jack Benny show, and Dick Bentley heard this, and this was just after Dick had left the ABC to join us in commercial radio. Dick had been a great success. I think it was in a show called Merry Go Round or something like that with the ABC.
Out of the bag
and Dick was a very fine radio comedian, very smart, polished, marvellous performer. And we bought him, and Dick came to join us in the ABC, and because at Colgate Palmolive from the ABC, and because Benny was using a boy, he thought he would try and do the same thing. It was a matter of where to find one. And I went to a party one night, and it was an artist party, and the artist party, people get up and do bits and turns and things, and at that time I'd been working in a show called the Sunshine Follies a couple of nights a week, and I got up and did a routine that I'd been doing in the Sunshine Follies, but I localised it to the people who were there. And afterwards, Dick says, do you think you could do lines? Well, I said, I thought that's what I've been doing. Well, he said, we'll have a talk. We'll have a talk on Monday. And the next thing, I had a part with Dick in the Colgate Palmolive shows. And then Dick left and went to England. Roy, in the meantime, had arrived in the show, and he was second comic on the show. Well, when Dick went to England, Roy became the star, and Roy said to me, "Pal, how would you like to work with a real comedian?" I said, you mean you, Mr. Rene? He said, that's who I mean, pal. He said, you stick with me, and you'll learn a thing or two.
Where are you, Dad? Here I am! Hey, Dad, guess what's happened? What? Starting from next week, the landlord is going to raise the rent.
That's very nice of him, because I'm damned if I can raise it.
No, Dad. No, we've got to pay more, or we'll be evicted.
Have you? In the McCackie family, there's no such word as eviction. We call it the moonlight flip. Anyhow, I won't be sorry to leave this neighborhood. Nothing but thieves on either side.
Who's been complaining about thieves on either side?
The joker next door. Anyway, I'm not worried. I'm going on the annual holiday shortly.
Where to, Dad?
Well, where do I usually spend 2 weeks every year?
Oh, yes. The inebriate's home.
Mr. Lasho, Hal Lashwood, is still very much on the scene. He's deputy mayor of a Sydney beachside municipality.
My first real contact with him was when we worked together in radio in 1941, when he left the Tivoli theatres. As you might remember, well, you would know, John, being expert in show business, there were the three comedians, Jim Gerald, George Wallace and Mo, who all left at the same time for certain reasons, and then Mo wanted to go into radio. And it was thought that he wouldn't be successful in radio because with that splutter that he had, that it was rather indistinct, his voice, it was all right in the theatre, but on radio they were a bit concerned. Anyway, they brought him in. Now, Roy wore false dentures, and he hardly ever had them in his mouth. He used to wear them in his top pocket. And we put them in for the program, and but they kept falling, And I had to be frank with him. I said to him after the show, because we were friends, and I said, Roy, these teeth that you have, I said, you'll have to do something about those. You'll have to have another set made. And because he was a dedicated performer, and he did. He had a nice new set made, and he still wore them in his top pocket, but at least they did fit better.
The phone. This is it. Take your head off that phone. Take your head. Please, Master, will you please take your head off that phone? How dare you? How dare you take such a liberty? That's the third consecutive time you've done that in my house, being a guest. You're nothing more than a kleptomaniac. Want to grab everything you see. I can't understand a man of your caliber, of your intellectual standing, to come in a thing like that. There's something very, very sacred in one's home, and that's a telephone. So, in future, kindly keep your hands to yourself. Hello? I can't hear a thing.
Well, take the receiver off the hook.
Look, I don't need your help, thank you. Hello? Oh, yes. Yes, JCW? Yes. Yes. Very well, JCW. What's that, JCW? You got to use me, JCW. What? In the name of the mountain. Oh, that's lovely, JCW. Thank you so much, JCW.
Oh, excuse me. Do they want your voice for one of the rebels?
No, better than that. They want to use me nose as one of the mountains.
Horrible Herbie was Jack Burgess, a very delightful fellow from Adelaide, who came over when Jack Davey left the unit and went to work with the American Red Cross. Spencer the Garbage Man. A very interesting story about Spencer. Spencer tried to be an entertainer from the age of 16 and was playing the piano and singing Ronald Franco songs all his life, just managed to eke out a living, gave up eventually, and became a librarian at the Colgate radio unit. And one day, Jack Davies said to him, "Tell me, Harry, do you always talk like that?" His name was Harry Avondale. "You always talk like that?" He said, "Like what, Mr. Davey?" He said, "Like that." He said, "I don't know what you mean." He said, "Well, come inside for a second." So he took Harry Avondale inside, and Jack wrote out a couple of lines. He said, "Say that for me." So he said it. You know, quite remarkable. Everything that Harry Avondale ever said on microphone got a laugh, whether it was a straight line or a funny line. And actually, Jack found him and started to use him as a character called Sylvester the Dill. Then Jack went away, and Dick Bentley used him as Spencer the Censor. And what he used to do is to come in and say, "Oh, Mr. Bentley, you can't say that. That called for blue pencils." Then Roy got hold of him. And they said, "Well, we've got to do something with this fella." And Freddie Parsons said, "Well, listen, let's make him a sissy garbage man, so that'll be a nice juxtaposition of logic." Well, every time Harry opened his mouth, there was a laugh on the... Actually, some nights he actually rivaled Roy.
Peekaboo, everybody, it's little me, Spencer the Garbage Man.
Ah, come in, Spencer! Dear, and bring your schoolgirl complexion with you.
Mr. McCackie, did I just hear you bursting into glorious song?
Yes, Spencer. I was singing a very romantical number. How did it affect you? Did it make you shy?
No, but it made me horse shy.
Hey, what do you think, Spencer? Now he's practicing singing for the Grand Opera Company.
I am, too. Already I can sing the 3 C's. Middle C, a high C.
Yeah, what's the other C?
Suck it and sing. I say, put that on your pizzicato and strum it.
Well, I wish I'd known, Mr. McCackie. I have a favourite air, but I didn't bring it with me.
That's what you think. Oh, dear. What is it, Spence?
I'll walk beside you.
Oh, no, you won't. Oh, phew.
My Uncle Harrico lost his voice once.
Did he?
So the doctor told him to take some pills on an empty stomach.
Did he, Spence, and what happened?
They rolled off.
McCackie.
It's Mr. Lashwood, the Phantom of the Opera. Come in, Lasho, and shake hands with the voice soprano. every morn I bring thee balm.
McCackie, you running off the scales of an aria?
No, I'm scraping off the scales of a doofish. Blackhead. I'm expecting a call from the opera company.
Opera? What do you know about opera?
I know all the operas, from Carmen to Miranda.
Hal Ashwood was actually Roy's straight man in all those radio shows, with all the bits, whether it was the barmaid or the butcher or a Hickle Spot with the green eye of the little yellow god or anything. And Hal used to work with him beautifully. He knew just how to handle him, and Hal was very fond of him. Had a good deal of affection for Roy, and had looked at him from afar in the years past and seen him work on stage. And Lashwood and Roy Rene together on radio was really a magnificent double, and never anyone came anywhere near Hal as a straight man for Roy.
When we did this particular sketch of it was called The Difference. It was the blind man sitting on the bench. I used to sit on the bench, the blind person, and Roy used to walk on with his little butt of a cigarette, and butt it out and put it in his vest pocket. And then he used to call me Mr. La-di-da, and because I had a chauffeur who used to be there with me, and then he would talk about, and I wouldn't respond to him very well, and he'd talk about his being down on his luck, and the last words were, you tell me about your misfortunes. You're very fortunate because, you see, I'm blind. And then he'd say, I'm sorry. And then he used to sing Underneath the Arches. And he used to always finish those Philip and Aubrey routines. Roy would sing a song. Stony Broken, No Man's Land, Underneath the Arches, all those old songs. He loved singing. Oh, he thought he had a beautiful voice. He said, I've got the beautiful voice, pal, haven't I?
Underneath the arches, I dream my dreams away. Underneath the arches of cobblestones I lay. Every night you'll find me tired out and warm, waiting for the daylight comes creeping, heralding the dawn, sleepy when it's raining, and sleeping when it's fine. You'll hear those trains rattling by above. Oh, payment for my pillow, no matter where I stray. Underneath the arches, I dream my dreams away.
I asked both Harry Griffiths and Hal Lashwood to try and explain the control that Roy had over audiences.
He was a genius, there's no doubt in my mind. I worked with a lot of comedians, but I've never seen the response of an audience to any other comedian. He always made his first entrance in front of the front tabs, always made it by himself, of course, da-da-da-da-da-da-dum, muzzle top, and then the audience, you could see just a spotlight in the centre, and the audience would just be on the edge of their seats waiting for him. And I used to go up into the circle box, and I used to open the curtain and peer through, because I used to love to watch this reaction and he'd just open the tabs and put his face through, and the audience would laugh and laugh. I've actually seen them, John. I've seen them fall from the seat onto the floor with laughter. Absolutely amazing.
One night, he was asked if he would make an appearance at the town hall for some Lord Mayor's charity or some such charity. And he said, well, if you don't mind, no. He said, because I'll be rehearsing all day and then I'll be doing a show, and by that time I'll be very tired and I won't be up to doing any work. So they countered by saying, well, now look, if you'd be good enough just to come along, walk on stage and say good evening, and I'm too tired to walk, and nice to see you, and go, and then we could put your name on the bill, we'd be very grateful. Would you do that? He said, yes, I'll do that, because I will have my makeup on, because he wouldn't put it on unless he's being paid. He had a lot of work to putting it on, and he used to do a beautiful job with it. So he said, yes, all right, he'd do that if that's all he had to do. And if I remember rightly, Jim Gussie had the band for the show. So my job was I had to take the muzzle top play on across to Jim Gussie to play Roy on and play him off. So that was right. So I was there that night, and Lashwell went over to go out and set a stage and introduce him. So I was able to stand just at the first lot of doors there and just look up and see what happened. And this is what happened. Quite remarkable. He was introduced, Lashwood said, and ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Australia's #1 comedian, Roy Rene, Mo. And he just stuck his head around the corner of the steps that lead up onto the stage and the apron there. And I hadn't heard this sound for a long time. And the roar came. Now, there used to be a roar when he used to stick his face around the proscenium at the Tivoli. And once heard, never forgotten.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, my friend, what does it feel like to be a hero?
I have mixed feelings.
Mixed feelings?
Well, yes. When I came ashore, 2 old gentlemen shook my hand, and 2 young gentlemen shook my watch.
Tonight, I am going to present you with a gold medal for bravery. But before that, I'd like to tell our audience all about your heroism.
Yes, do that now. Stick around and look modest.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I tell them what a fine fellow I am.
Yes,
go on.
All right.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I lay it on a bit because I've got a lot of friends to see.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen.
Very influential friends, too. Like doctors and lawyers and bookmakers and urgers.
Was he a generous performer to work with?
Yes, but he didn't like other comedians.
Very few comedians do.
That's right. But no, he was a very generous performer. For people working with him, he used to say to me, the more laughs that. Well, if I could get laughs, the more laughs I got, the better it was for him, because it was his sketch after all. And anybody who got laughs, in McCackie Mansion, we had Spencer the Garbage Man, Horrible Herbie, Young Harry, and myself as Lasho. But, he used to want us all to get laughs, and of course that made the sketch much better.
As a man, did you ever see him lose his temper, for instance?
The first thing that Graham Kennedy ever asked me about him said, tell me, Harry, just between ourselves, was he a bastard? And I'm happy to say he was not. He was certainly not. He was very kind to me when I was a young man, and he was a successful star. But he was also a real man, and he was capable of being annoyed when things didn't go right. Or one night, I don't know why I did it. It just occurred to me at the last minute, but we did a gag, and something about, well, Harry, now we've got a motor car. It may be second-hand, but it's a motor car. And he had to turn around, and I had to look at his nose, and I say, yes, and we've got a motor horn as well, you see, something like that. Well, when he stuck his nose at me, it just looked like the bulb on a motor horn, and I reached out and squeezed it. I just went like that. When I said, it's got a motor horn. Well, I saw his eyes come to life. I saw, I thought I shouldn't have done that. And the other thing is, when I took my fingers off the makeup, I could see the makeup all over my 3 fingers. I'd left 3 fingerprints all over his nose. Well, he used to, for a young Harry cop this, he used to have a slapstick. He hit me on top of the head. Not this night. It was a backhander, came right from the floor and hit me right in the forehead. Bang. Oh, jeez. And then, when he came off, he said, I want to talk to you. I said, yes, Mr. Rene. He said, don't you ever do that again.
Roy had many ways of commanding respect. Here's young Harry again.
If Dick Bentley or Dyer or Bob Dyer or Jack Davy say, good evening, Roy, how are you? He'd say, oh, very well, thank you, son. And I think that's funny. He didn't call him Jack, and he didn't call him Bob, he called him son. So I said to Freddie Parsons once, I said, how does he get away with that? Because these fellows really, Mr. Davy is the most successful man in the radio business, bar none, and, as far as I'm concerned, the cleverest man I ever met. And I said, Mr. Dyer does pretty well in his business, and Mr. Manning, but I said, when he calls them son, they never flinch. Well, he said, it's his way of reminding them that he was a star when they were crapping in their nappies.
There are many funny stories about Roy Rene. Fred Parsons says that Roy hated his dentures. Two of the funniest stories are about them.
I happened to be working one night with him at the Melbourne Town Hall. It was a charity performance. I can't remember the charity. We did an enormous number of charities, and it was packed to the rafters, and we were doing a double, just the two of us, and right down centre front stage, and had the footlights along the front of the town hall stage, and with his famous splutter, you know the way he'd splutter, and of course he spluttered, and the teeth just flew out. Flew out. I could see them flying from his mouth, and they went down into the footlights. And, of course, it got a tremendous laugh, but he was terribly embarrassed about it, strangely enough. But he was down on his hands and knees looking for them, because without them, he felt you couldn't understand what he was saying at all. It was difficult to understand him at times with them. But he was down like a seagull after a fish, he was down on his hands and knees. And I could even see, he used to wear the white makeup and the black beard, but around the back of his neck, he was red. He was absolutely red and embarrassed. And the first thing he said to me afterwards, he said, whatever you do, pal, he said, don't tell Sadie.
One night, now this was in Sydney at the Sydney Radio Theatre. We had Joan Sutherland singing. Now I'm talking about 1946-47. And Joan was singing, I think, My Hero from the Chocolate Soldier, or some other thing that Joan, I think at the time, used to call Germs of Musical Comedy. Of course, Joan has a great sense of humour, very pleasant. Dame Joan. Anyway, she was out there singing her heart out, beautifully, as always. Though not recognised then. And we were waiting to come on. Now, whenever Mo used to get nervous, he used to whip his teeth out, and he used to have a middy glass of water there, and he'd take the teeth out and dip them in the middy glass and shake them around a bit, then put some fast teeth on them, then put them back, then wait for a while and then get nervous and take them out again, dip them in the glass, shake all the water on them, put the fast teeth on them, put them back. This is, just waiting, and getting anxious. Well, then here's Joan come to the end of the number, and he just gets the teeth out of the glass and whacks her in, and we're ready to rush on. And Joan comes rushing on and said, my God, I'm famished. Grabbed the glass, whacked, drank the lot. Drank the lot. Well, there was so much fast teeth in that water, John. It's a wonder last stupenda ever got a mouth open again.
Roy's career in radio continued into the early 1950s, but then the Colgate unit began moving out of variety and into quiz shows, notably with Bob Dyer. Ron Beck, the force behind the unit, had set up his own production company, and when he was asked to devise a new format for the Atlantic show, he chose Roy as the star comedian. Roy's comeback to radio was a great success, and the show even outrated Bob Dyer's Pick-a-Box. In May 1953, Roy and Sadie were spending a few days' holiday in Lismore, when he suffered a heart attack from which he was never to fully recover. His health gradually deteriorated, and he died on the 22nd of November 1954, just 2 years before television came to Australia. TV could have been Roy's natural medium. Many tributes were paid to him, but the officiating rabbi at the funeral said it best of all. He began his speech by saying, Mo was one of the mob, and they loved him.
A very good man, Roy Rene. I must say that for him. I must give him that, because he really was. And he was he had nice ideas about things. He only wanted everything for us. He used to say, it's all for you. Still, when I think back over the years, it's been very wonderful. And I did say this before, but when we came home from the theatre at night, from the Tivoli, we lived then at Cottenham Avenue, Kensington, and we used to make a turn round into our avenue. And every night, when we turned back into that avenue, we would say, "Happy Road."
Here I am on the outside again. I'm beginning to realize it's the best place to be because I'm free. Everything I want in life is free. Things I couldn't buy with LSD. Someone put them there for you and me. Free. Who would pay to hear a symphony? Listen to the songbirds in the trees. Songbirds sing a lovely melody. I've got the arches and the alleys to shelter me from the winter's cold. I've got the green hills and the valleys when summer is parading a gold. And it's free. No one could be luckier than me. Nature never had a lock a key. Isn't that the way it ought to be?
That affectionate tribute to Australia's greatest native-born comedian, Roy Rene, was written and produced by Rob Sharp. Special assistance from John Brunston. This is John West speaking. Talking about Roy's life were Sadie Gale, his widow, and his friends Queenie Paul, Bill Sadler, Harry Griffiths and Hal Lashwood. Thanks as well to Peter Burgess of the National Library, Canberra.